Okay, what do you think? We uncomfortable?
See, I always thought Elohim always spoke of God.
Right.
The big G, and
Right.
nobody else.
Right.
And I did not realize that.
Yep, in the Old Testament, and we'll get into a little bit of that right here. There's a Hebrew word called El. El is a singular. It's only talking about one thing. When you say El, you're always only talking about one thing. El means God with a little g. El is still people called Baal El. Baal was not Yahweh, but Baal was a powerful spiritual being. El is just like the word Lord. So in the Bible, you could use the Lord to describe Yahweh God, but Lord could also be considered a master of a household of servants. Sometimes even husbands were called Lord by their wives. So it was a title. So El is a title, and it's talking about single. When you add the him on the end, the ohim, Elohim, that means there's lots of them. When I was in Indonesia, I learned that bananas was pisang. One banana was pisang. If I wanted to talk about more than one banana, I had to say pisang pisang. I just said it twice. And that was the only way they told the difference between one thing and two and more than one thing. And so in Hebrew language, they do the same thing. Like we do, we put an S or an ES on the end of words to make them from singular to plural. They put an ohim on the end of it. So Elohim can be plural, but it also can be singular. And you have to read the context. Remember back when we said we're studying the Bible, context is king? If I say my nose is running, that's a one kind of running. If I say I'm going to run for election, that's a different kind of running. If I'm going to run to the drugstore, I'm not physically running, I'm going to get in the car and drive there. Run can be used in a lot of different ways. Same thing with Elohim. Elohim can be used in different ways, and what you have to do is you have to look at the text to say, what is the text telling us that this word means? Does that make sense? So, Elohim, what are we talking? It's a non-physical, supernatural beings. They're called Elohim. Anything that lives in the heavenly realm can be described as an Elohim. And you say, that doesn't make sense. How can Elohim be one or more than one? Well, how about sheep? I can have a sheep, or I can have sheep. It's the same word, but in the context of the sentence, we know it's one or a lot. I can have a deer, or I can see deer. It's the same word. Moose is the same. Offspring is the same. Aircraft, pants. I can have pants, which is one, or I can have a drawer of pants, which is more than one. You, and a lot of times in church, to make the difference, because as we look at the text, we understand whether it's singular or plural. A lot of times we'll say you or y'all. Okay? And that is a way for us to try to explain what the writers of the New Testament and Old Testament are talking about when it says y'all instead of you. And you learn that by looking at the sentence structure. Are we unpacking it okay? Are you with me?
I'm glad we're all north, because if we were southern, it would be all y'all.
It would be all y'all, right. And sometimes that's probably the best translation of the Bible. It's like, all y'all come, whosoever will. That's the all y'all. Brooke, did you have a...
Well, I'm just wondering, it talks about the different creatures in Revelation, like they've got like 4 different heads and things like that, but you say they're non-physical, so I'm just wondering how to think about that.
Right. They appear that way, just like angels will appear in human form. We're going to look a little bit more about some of those weird creatures, and some of them have specific names. That's why I get real uncomfortable when we talk about angels, because what happened is the Old Testament had separate words, and then it was translated into Greek. And when it got to Greek, the writers of Greek, they didn't have all those separate categories of words, and so they used the word angelos, angels. And so everything could be an angelos, just like everything could be an Elohim. And you had to read the text to know what kind of an angelos, an angel, we're talking about. Angel, in the Old Testament, where they got this word before they translated it to Greek, is called malak. Malak is a specific kind of an Elohim. Malak means messenger. And most of the time when we read about angels, especially in the New Testament, or we read about Michael or Gabriel, they are messenger angels. They have the role of being a messenger, which would be malak in Hebrew. And when the Greeks translated it, was angel, and got lumped in with a whole bunch of other things that they translated as angel. You with me? Have I lost anybody? Okay. That's why we have to break this out just a little bit so we can understand why we need the armor of God.